It did not begin with a prophecy. It began with a whisper, a stolen breath in the dark, a plan scrawled in fear and followed in fire. There were no glowing blades to guide them, no chosen one to lead them, only shadows moving through chaos, only names history would never remember. They did not fight for glory. They fought because there was no other choice, because the boots of tyranny had crushed too many homes, because the stars no longer felt like hope, because silence had become a weapon, and someone had to speak through it. This was not rebellion wrapped in heroism. This was rebellion forged in desperation. It was not destiny. It was design. From those who knew they would not see the sunrise, but lit the spark anyway. They gave everything, and asked for nothing. Not medals, not monuments, just the chance to matter. Rogue One did not ask you to cheer. It asked you to listen. It showed you the price. It made you hold your breath as lives ended quietly, as choices unfolded without comfort, as courage burned without ever being seen. There was no rescue, no miracle. Only grit, only weight, only sacrifice. And in that sacrifice, something powerful emerged. Not a legend, but a truth. That rebellion is not a myth. It is real. It is ugly. It is necessary. And maybe that truth was too sharp, too honest, too heavy for the stories that came after, because they forgot what Rogue One dared to remember. In this video, we explore why Rogue One was the last great Star Wars movie, why it broke the mold by grounding the myth, why its silence hit harder than any anthem, and how its sacrifice gave Star Wars a soul, one the galaxy has been trying to find again ever since. There was something different about Rogue One, something heavier, something colder, something real. It did not open with hope. It opened with silence, with fear, with the kind of breath you hold when you know what is coming. It told a story we already knew, but made us feel like we never understood it. It reached into the margins of myth and pulled out the names history forgot, the faces the saga left behind, the people who didn't live to see the credits roll. There were no Jedi to save them, no chosen one to tip the scales, no prophecy to justify their pain. There were only choices, terrible, desperate, necessary. There were only rebels with dirt under their nails, with ghosts behind their eyes. We saw the rebellion not as banners waving, but as hands shaking, as orders given with regret, as sacrifices made in silence. This was no opera. This was war. This was the cost of that opening crawl. And for the first time in a long time, Star Wars didn't feel safe, didn't feel shiny. It felt wounded, flawed, breathing. And in that breath, something honest lived. Rogue One did what so many others were afraid to do. It let go of legacy. It stepped away from destiny. It stopped chasing nostalgia and dared to ask what rebellion actually looks like. It showed us the mess, the compromise, the contradiction. Rebels who killed informants, leaders who lied, soldiers who doubted themselves as much as they doubted their enemies. There was no simple good, no cartoon evil. And yet, after Rogue One, the galaxy forgot again. The stories returned to royalty, to prophecy. Two characters chosen not by grit, but by lineage. The tension was lost, the honesty abandoned. We were given spectacle instead of substance, familiar faces instead of unfamiliar stakes. There was no more dirt, no more blood, no more weight to the word rebellion. Just recycled rhythms played at higher volume. Rogue One broke the pattern, but the pattern rebuilt itself overnight, and with each new title, that quiet courage was buried deeper beneath the noise. There is a pain that lingers in Rogue One, not from betrayal, not from defeat, but from the knowledge that every life we followed was a candle meant to be snuffed out. Every smile was temporary, every promise a whisper, every goodbye unspoken. They did not die with glory, they died with purpose. And purpose is heavier. It does not shine, it burns. It does not comfort, it carves. These were not heroes who triumphed. They were soldiers who knew they would not be remembered. Jyn Erso never saw the Death Star fall. Cassian Andor never heard the cheers on Endor. Chirrut never knew if the Force truly listened. Baze never found what came after belief. They gave everything for a future they would never touch. That kind of sacrifice is rare, not just in Star Wars, but in storytelling itself. We are so used to heroes surviving, so used to fate bending in their favor, that we forget what it means to lose something for real. Rogue One reminded us. And in doing so, it hurt. It left a scar. The kind of scar that proves something mattered, something bled, something ended. There is something breathtaking in the way Rogue One builds. Not fast, not loud, but steady, deliberate. Like a march toward a storm you cannot escape. Like thunder that grows behind your ribs. Every scene carries weight. Every glance has tension. Every step forward feels earned. The world feels lived in. The characters feel worn, and the choices feel inevitable. like dominoes falling one breath at a time. The third act does not explode. It erupts. It layers chaos with clarity, death with meaning, fear with fire. We see war unfold, not as choreography, but as survival, as desperation, as belief sharpened into action. The final moments are not about victory. They are about fulfillment. A transmission sent, a hope ignited, a future secured by lives extinguished. And in that ending, we see the beginning of everything that mattered. It is rare to find beauty in tragedy. But Rogue One is a masterpiece, painted in loss, and in every frame there is something sacred. Hope is not a slogan. It is not a speech. It is not a logo printed on a starfighter. Hope is what you hold when the sky is falling, when the plan is broken, when there is no chance and you go anyway. Not because you expect to win, but because giving up is not an option. Rogue One gave us the truest version of hope. Raw, terrified, alive. It was not clean or noble or dressed in light. It was soaked in blood, cracked by betrayal, whispered through prison bars and smoke. It was not born in victory. It was carved from failure. It lived in a message recorded by a daughter, in the quiet defiance of an assassin, in the faith of a blind man who could not see, in the heart of a cynic who finally believed. Hope moved through them, not as destiny, but as a decision made over and over again. And that decision mattered, because it was earned, because it came from people with no safety net, no divine gifts, just conviction. That is the kind of hope that changes everything. Not because it guarantees peace, but because it makes peace possible. Rogue One ended with death, but it never felt hollow. It felt like the lighting of a fuse, like the beginning of something that mattered more than survival. It felt like trust passed forward, from nameless rebels to legends not yet born, to the audience watching, daring us to hold on to that same hope, even when the odds are gone. Rogue One was the last great Star Wars movie. Not because it followed tradition, but because it defied it. Not because it dazzled us with spectacle, but because it moved us with purpose. It was not a fantasy, it was a reckoning, and that made it unforgettable. It reminded us that the galaxy is not held together by prophecy, but by people, ordinary, overwhelmed, fighting because they have to, not because they are told to. The story was not about balance, or bloodlines, or lightsabers. It was about sacrifice, about cost, about what it truly means to resist. These were not chosen ones, not heroes waiting for destiny. They were footnotes. They were shadows. They were names that never made it to the next page, and that is why their story mattered. Because it was finite, because it was fragile, because it was real. What came after tried to recapture the fire, but forgot where the spark began. It dressed up rebellion in color and speed, but lost the silence between the explosions. It forgot the weight of a single life traded for a chance, a single choice made in darkness, a single step taken with no promise of survival. And so Rogue One remains, not as an outlier, but as a reminder of what Star Wars can be when it dares to be honest, when it trades myth for meaning, when it lets the story bleed. We do not remember it because it was loud. We remember it because it was true, and because it proved that even without Jedi, without destiny, a single act of courage can save a galaxy.